This is an explanation of the American Pageant Chapter 1, specifically the sections titled When Worlds Collide and the Spanish Conquistadors. We start on October 12, 1492, when Christopher Columbus first landed on the shore of the Bahamas after his voyage from Spain. This is a very general mapping of the route he took, but that is around the point where he landed. What happened as a result of this encounter is that two societies, each comparable to ecosystems, collided. Whether this was for better or for worse is still controversial. European explorers were introduced to new flora and fauna in the New World. They found animals like iguana and rattlesnakes. Plants like tobacco, maize, beans, tomatoes, and potatoes revolutionized European economy and diet. Native Americans were introduced to many things from the Old World as well. Columbus returned to Hispaniola in 1493 in 17 ships that held hundreds of cattle, swine, and horses. The horses quickly spread through North America from Mexico and got to Canada in less than 2 centuries, so North American Indian tribes like the Apache, Sioux, and Blackfoot adopted the horse, changing their societies into nomadic hunter societies that roamed the Great Plains in search of shaggy buffalo. Columbus also brought seedlings for sugarcane, which the Caribbean climate was ideal for growing, and so, fueled by the forced migration of millions of Africans to work the cane field of the New World, a sugar revolution took place in European diets. The Europeans also brought some negative contributions from the Old World to the New World. They brought the seeds of harmful weeds and plants, including Kentucky bluegrass, dandelions, and daisies. But more importantly, they carried the germs that caused smallpox, yellow fever, and malaria. Old World diseases devastated the Native Americans, since they had lived in isolation so long. Any protective antibodies were wiped from their population, and without natural resistance, they died in masses. Within 50 years of Spanish arrival, the population of tame natives in Hispaniola decreased from about 1 million to 200. In the centuries after Columbus's arrival, as much as 90% of the Native Americans perished, most from Old World maladies. Native American negative contributions to the European explorers was the syphilis STD. The name given to the three-way explosion in international commerce that resulted from Christopher Columbus's expedition was the Columbian Exchange. From the New World to the Old World, things like gold, silver, corn, potatoes, pineapples, tomatoes, tobacco, beans, vanilla, chocolate, and syphilis were transferred. From the Old World to the New World, there was wheat, sugar, rice, coffee, horses, cows, pigs, then smallpox, measles, the bubonic plague, influenza, typhus, diphtheria, and scarlet fever. There was also transfer from Africa to the New World, and that was slave labor. So come 1494 and the Treaty of Tordesillas goes into place, as Spain officially claims Columbus's so-called discovery of America. Spain also divided the New World with Portugal. The divide looked something like this. Spain got most of the land in the New World, but Portugal received compensation territory for it in Africa, Asia, and the area of modern-day Brazil. Spain became the dominant exploring and colonizing power of the 1500s, and they spread out through the Caribbean and the mainland of North and South America. Demographically, only about half of the conquistadors were professional soldiers. Some were nobles, and the rest of them were peasants, artisans, and other members of the middle class. There are three motives to point out here: God, to spread Christianity and ensure God's favor; glory, with royal or noble titles; and gold. Most of them never actually achieved dreams of glory or gold, as even the wealth earned from the New World was unevenly divided. Often the commander's home region received the bulk of the riches. There are some very notable Spanish conquistadors and expeditions in the Americas to discuss here. Vasco Núñez Balboa is known as the discoverer of the Pacific Ocean. He came upon the shore of Panama in 1513 and claimed all the lands touched by that sea for his king. Ferdinand Magellan started his journey in Spain in 1519 with 5 small ships. After going through the strait off the tip of South America, he was slain by the inhabitants of the Philippines. His one remaining ship reached back to Spain in 1522, completing the first ever world circumnavigation. Juan Ponce de Leon explored Florida in 1513 and 1521, which he first thought was an island. He died seeking gold by an Indian arrow. Francisco Coronado was looking for the fabled golden cities from 1540 to 1542 in Arizona and New Mexico, slightly touching Kansas. He found the Grand Canyon of the Colorado River and enormous herds of bison, two natural wonders. Hernando de Soto led a gold-seeking expedition from 1539 to 1542. He crossed the Mississippi River and brutally mistreated the Indians he found there, and eventually died of fever and wounds. Two of the most infamous were Hernan Cortes and Francisco Pizarro. Cortes extinguished the Aztec Empire around 1521 in Central and Southern America. This is a picture of their leader, Montezuma. Pizarro destroyed the Incas of Peru in 1532. His excavation of the area then contributed to a lot of the silver that Spain was practically swimming in by the 1600s. A lot of this silver also came from present-day Bolivia and Mexico. Now, this led to huge changes in the European economy. Precious metal floods started a price revolution in Europe that increased consumer costs by as much as 500% in the century following the 1550s. Many scholars believe that this led to the growth of the economic system known as capitalism. New World goods swelled the vaults of bankers from Spain to Italy, laying the foundations for modern commercial banking. Merchants from France and Holland achieved this wealth as well, starting a spread in commerce and manufacturing. If you look at the graph, the greatest growth is for the city Valencia in Spain. On a map, you would find it about here. The silver, additionally, which is basically the only thing that Asia wanted from Europe, made trade with Asia much easier. Finally, the West Indies of the Caribbean Sea served as offshore bases of the planning of Spanish invasion in mainland Americas. Supplies were stored, and men and horses were rested and acclimated. The native communities of the West Indies provided labs for testing techniques that would eventually defeat advanced Indian civilizations in Mexico and Peru. The most important technique was known as encomienda, which allowed the government to commend or give Indians to certain colonists in return for the promise to try to Christianize them. It was essentially slavery.